Music appreciation 101.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Music Appreciation 101. I am joined by very special guest, Steve Brickman. Steve, what's up, man? Thank you for coming on.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is awesome.
I'm so excited to talk to you about music because you take the multi-instrumentalist thing to a totally new level. Like, some people, they like dabble, they do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Rarely do you see somebody that's not just a jack of all trades, but is like a master of many. And that's what I consider you to be, just watching your videos, watching what you're playing. Incredible saxophonist, keyboardist, pianist, guitarist, composer, vocalist, like in awe of you, man. Really, really excited to chat.
Thanks, man. Appreciate all those kind words. I'm just trying. That's all I'm doing.
Same, man. Same. That's all we can do. But if you try hard enough for long enough, you end up getting decent at these things.
That's true. You're not wrong about that.
So I was reading your bio, but just to fill everybody in a little bit on kind of your journey, how you came up. I was seeing you kind of started with piano and then went over to saxophone. Is that kind of how the progression went?
Yeah. So my mom's a piano teacher.
Oh, cool.
So there's always just kind of been music in our house. And then I started on classical piano in second grade. I took one lesson with my mom, and then I said, I think I need a real deal. And she's a real teacher, but like, you know, a more focused teacher. So then I ended up taking lessons with this very strict but amazing Russian woman.
Sweet.
So like, you know, she had the accent, and she's, you know, I'd be like, play a thing, and my mom thought it sounded good, and she would ask me, what did you think? And I said, it's pretty good. She's like, I did not like it. We must do it again. But it was great because it gave me like a great foundation of technique for playing and just kind of practice regimen and a little bit of structure. So yeah, so piano in second grade, played violin for a year in third grade, and then dropped it and picked up clarinet and saxophone in fourth grade. And that's kind of where it all started.
Were you drawn to saxophone like as a kid? Was there something about it that took you over to that instrument?
I was. It's funny. I think there's a picture of me when I'm like 4 with a little toy saxophone, and I just took it everywhere. So
Sweet.
I think I just always wanted to play that instrument for some reason.
That's great. It's like a magnet. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Talking about practice regimen, I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about for multi-instrumentalists, because that's like one of the things you can bring from instrument to instrument. How did you like structure that, and how has that evolved kind of over the years, the way that you approach just practice?
Definitely. So for me, in terms of my instruments, I feel like saxophone and piano are 50-50 because I started them around the same time and always kind of kept them up. Like in high school, I'd be still taking classical piano lessons and then started to take jazz lessons. But at the same time, I was playing a lot of jazz saxophone in ensembles, and, you know, I would go to NEC. On Saturdays, they had like a little college prep program for high school students. So I was kind of dipping my toes in there. So pretty much they've been 50-50. And then along the way, I've picked up other instruments like flute and clarinet. I really focused on in college because we had to for the school. And then guitar, I picked up later in life because I sold an organ, and then they wanted to sell me a 70 Strat. So I was like, all right, let me try guitar because I've always wanted to play. And then bass is kind of an extension of that. But in terms of practicing, I feel like it was very important starting out to have a good foundation. You know, learn the technique of the instrument, really practice the fundamentals of it, whatever it is, whether it's piano or sax. So for piano, it was, you know, really helpful. I had to practice scales, 2 octaves, both hands, every day, every morning. You know, there'd be a couple major, minor, diminished, dominant, major 7, or it was just major scales, but all that kind of stuff. And really learning the correct fingering.
Nice.
That's super helpful if you're starting out in piano, just to have those foundations of the correct fingering, because then later on, once you start doing your own thing and improvising, it's second nature of where your hands want to go. And whereas vice versa, if you just hop into it, which is great as well. But if you don't have that foundation of fingering, you're more easy. It's easier to get tripped up on trying to play something, and then you run out of fingers to do it.
Yeah.
Because with the fingerings, it helps you kind of glide because you can sneak your thumb in and then it keeps things going. So that's helpful for piano and saxophone. I think long tones or any sort of brass or woodwind instrument,
Hmm.
playing long tones, really getting your tone.
Mm.
Because I think that's the most important thing in terms of a wind instrument is your sound. It's like your voice, but
Yeah.
through the instrument. So really practicing long tones and the technique of the instrument and scales. But yeah, tone is the most important. Tone and feel, I think, for wind instrument, and then just the fundamentals of the piano, which there's so much resources out there for that kind of stuff.
Oh, for sure. I think that's one of the interesting things, like when you're coming up approaching an instrument that sometimes differentiates people that are successful and aren't, are those that are able to like distill like, okay, these are the fundamentals that I have to figure out. Like, because there's an infinite amount of options that you can go, especially when you're starting out. Like, what do I start with? What do I practice harder than others? And I think what you're getting to is that essential point. I feel that same thing with like guitar. Like one of the most crucial things, because I didn't know how to play guitar solos or whatever, that my teacher taught me was like how to do different articulations for the same note and like how to
Mhm.
match pitches with bends and like these little things that you don't really think about practicing, but once you start incorporating them into a real regimen, it unlocks improvisation. It unlocks your ability to just flow.
Oh, totally. And if you look at all the masters of any craft, like Picasso and Dali and Philip Glass and all these guys, they studied the traditional technique of their craft, and then they eventually branched out to do their own thing. And I mean, it's obviously more fun to just, oh, I just want to jam and hop into it. I don't want to like sit down and practice. But
Mhm.
I think it's so important, especially when you're starting out. And there's ways to make it fun. I know there's these guys called like the piano guys who have a more fun way of practicing piano, or you can like make a game out of it, try and practice scales, with a metronome. And if you're able to do it, like, you know, um, I don't know, you have some sort of prize for yourself. Just trying to
Yeah,
make it fun, or even, working with a friend of yours. If you're thinking about starting piano or guitar,
hmm,
and your buddies also thinking about like, let's do it together, and then it becomes a camaraderie kind of thing. So it's not so isolating.
absolutely. And I like the idea too of like mixing, like you can have the same technique that you're going for, like running scales, but like play it at different subdivisions, different tempos, different feels,
Mhm.
like different gaps between the notes. So it's not just like 16th note up and down, doing the same thing over and over again. It's like play these things as you would musically.
Totally. You could even buy a cheap drum machine and have that
Yeah,
be your metronome, but then it's like a little fun jam session you're having.
exactly. Exactly. I love that. I love that. And like, I like the whole thing. Like some teachers had me do like improvisation where it's like, okay, we're going to run the scale a bunch. We're going to get that, but like, we're going to jump into improvisation pretty quickly in terms of just like getting to know the scale musically and then go back to running it again, kind
Yeah,
of that give and take between making things musical and then making things fundamental and being fluid between the two.
totally. Yeah, because you want to enjoy it too.
Right.
It's not, we don't have to play music. So, like, why not have fun while we're doing it?
Yeah, they call it playing for a reason. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah, I'm with you. So your evolution on the guitar, I want to hear kind of like how you develop now from like the student to the professional, like that movement to where now you got all these different hats that you can wear. How, where did you end up jumping to after college? Like, what was your first gig? What were the things that kind of transitioned from that amateur like shedding to taking it out on the stage?
Yeah. So when I hadn't played guitar until I was 24, 25.
Wow,
So,
really? That's awesome.
yes.
Very
So
cool.
after I graduated college, I went to University of Miami, Florida. I was studying classical composition and jazz saxophone. And then I moved to New York because I wanted to be a jazz saxophonist. And what
Cool.
better place
Yeah,
to
of
go than New
course.
York City? That's like
Totally.
where the best jazz musicians are. So I
Hmm.
moved there, and I started doing some composing for a couple of video game companies,
Cool. Awesome.
um, and some iPhone games as well. So I was doing that. I was going to the jam sessions every night. I made electronic music, so I was kind of working on that throughout the day, and that was my routine for a while.
Hmm.
And then the money started to dry up, so I needed to get a regular job. So I worked on fancy ice cream truck, a coffee shop, an after school technology thing for kids, which is where I met this drummer Dylan, who we formed a band with. And so I had a show coming up, and I was like, Dylan, you want to play the show? He's like, yeah. I was like, great, because my drummer dropped out. He's like, and then I was like, because they had a guitar there, and I had just
Okay.
been messing around with it a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and then so I was like, let's just start a band and see where it goes. So
Cool.
me and him, and I barely played any guitar, but it was the best experience for me to play with an amazing drummer because it just forced me to get really good really quickly. And, I'm still learning because guitar is such a challenging instrument, especially, I mean, from a technical standpoint compared to piano, because the way I see music in my mind is on a piano, even when I'm playing
Interesting.
saxophone.
Interesting.
But yeah, so then I started picking up the guitar and then played a lot of rock gigs. And that's kind of how I got into more recording. I'd always been recording forever. Like my parents got me a little recording setup in high school. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I just kind of learned, and that was the best way. And that kind of got me into composing my own music because I could record it. And then it also got me into electronic music because I had synths being a keyboard player.
Mhm.
But then when I got the guitar, I started to investigate rock music, which I had never figured out. And then I was like, oh, how do you make a guitar amp? Oh,
Mhm.
like how do we get good drum sounds? How do we
Mhm.
mix it all together? And then my palette of, in terms of recorded world of my music that I wanted to make, now I could have a whole new sound texture of distorted instruments,
Yes.
and it helped me figure out how to record acoustic instruments because that got me more into just the recording world in general. So and then I was working that, and then I started my own video business probably when I was 24, 25. Um, and so that was kind of how I sustained myself. I would film music related events, people's shows, music videos, EPKs with interviews, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So that was great because I learned a lot, and I was able to buy better equipment, which made
Mhm.
my videos looked better, which I could charge more. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of how I was financially supporting myself. And at the same time, I was always had my own musical projects, playing in other people's bands, still doing stuff. I did a couple things for Showtime. I had a spot on the Super Bowl, like a commercial there. So still doing some commercial music work, but the
Mhm.
video thing was kind of the bulk of my income. And then I moved to LA January 1st, 2020, right
Wow.
before the pandemic.
Wow.
So, and my intention was, I sold all my video equipment except for my really, really nice camera and a
Mhm.
couple of lenses and lights. And I'm like, I'm going to keep this, but I'm not going to tell anyone I do video. I'm going to,
Mhm.
move to this new place. I only do music. I have, some Miami network, like people I know from Miami that are kind of in the scene.
Mhm.
And that was my plan. And then everything got shut down. So, everyone was like figuring out what do we do. And then luckily I got a call from my buddy Jesse McGinty, who went to Miami, and he originally got this call for the Clairo gig that I'm doing now, and
Mhm.
he couldn't do because I think he has a daughter, he didn't want to travel, or
Mhm.
he just was too busy because he's doing a million things and he's amazing. So they called me, asked me if I wanted to do the gig. They heard my stuff, they liked what I could do. Um, they originally, I think I was supposed to play uh saxophone and clarinet, and then I told him I do all these other things, and I was really excited that the possibility, like, oh, I could play guitar here, piano
Yeah.
here. And then
Right.
when me and the musical director started talking, it just became clear that I was like probably gonna, I mean, everyone's kind of doubling in some way, but
Yep.
especially me, I had this arsenal, and they're like, well, why don't you play this? Like, I'm playing
Mhm.
a lot of acoustic on the set, which
Cool.
I didn't even,
Yeah.
I play acoustic, but that's kind of really got my acoustic chops together.
For sure.
Um, so yeah, that was kind of my journey.
I love
And I
it.
feel like my 20s were kind of exploring those new instruments like guitar, bass,
Mhm.
and sounds, pedals, and recording, and especially in a live environment. And then my 30s, I kind of had all those tools, and now it's more like my instrument is my collection of instruments in a
Yes.
sense.
It
So when
totally
people
makes
see
sense.
me, they're
Right
like,
there with you.
if you think of Jacob Collier, you don't think
Yeah.
he's a singer. You think of like
Right.
he does everything. I can't do
Exactly.
everything he does, but
Uh-huh.
I have a
Yeah.
lot of
Who can?
tools and skills at my disposal. So like I want to be able to use those to help other people,
Mhm.
and my own music too.
Totally. That's awesome. I think that's great story and synopsis. We'll dig into a few more of those things a little bit deeper, but I want to stop pause on the concept of doubling. So just in case listener doesn't know about that, like that is a pretty common thing now in the live world, where you're not just going to be the guitarist on stage. You might play a little keyboard part, or you might do something like that. Somebody like you who has a deeper, richer bag, you can double on everything from clarinet to acoustic guitar, and that's a really powerful thing in terms of having a calling card and having a value proposition that you're offering to that band that you're going to go on the road with.
Yeah, and you need to. I mean,
Yeah.
especially with budgets for music in general,
Yeah.
being lower, they need, you if you're able to offer, um, you kind of have to be able to play multiple instruments, even if
Hmm.
you're a guitar player, bass player, drummer, having some keyboard knowledge so you could play synth bass or
Yes.
a
Oh, yeah.
pad. It's kind of essential. And then also having the ability to run an Ableton session and playback is
Exactly.
huge
Right.
because you might be asked to do that. So I think it's kind of required that you're able to play multiple instruments and have multiple skills. And the more you have at your disposal, the more people would want to hire you because they get more bang for their buck.
Exactly. And like, think about it from their perspective too. One of the most expensive things that we just do in our normal lives is travel,
Mhm.
and just booking another hotel room, another seat on an airplane for a flight date, all that kind of stuff that
Oh
adds up
yeah,
so much.
every person adds up for sure.
Yeah. I just saw Kimbra at the Music Box here in San Diego, and yeah, trio. Um, Drummer who was also playing some synth bass and triggering stuff on SPD, for like different percussion things, and also like some horn samples and things that
Mhm.
was on the SPD, and then also somebody that just had like a bunch of keyboards running the Ableton session. That was the band.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the keyboard player, Jacob.
Oh,
He actually
he's
mixed one
slamming.
of our,
Yeah.
which he mixed one of our albums, which just shows he's also, like, an insanely talented audio recording engineer and mixing engineer, but he's playing with Kimbra, and he's doing live sounds, and he knows, like, the playbacks and all the Ableton and the keyboards, and so there's just another perfect example of these guys who just have so many tools, and, that's why they're getting hired.
100%. And it sounded awesome. And like, surprise, surprise, because you have people that aren't just, like, I just have my lane. It's like, no, I'm aware of the music itself, the audio, the whole complexity, and contributing to that in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
it's really sick. I want to talk about licensing a little bit more. You mentioned the Super Bowl stuff. You mentioned doing staff composing for video games. How do you approach creative briefs? So I guess actually maybe walk listeners through kind of like how the creative brief hits you, kind of what they're normally like, and then how you translate that into actually recorded music.
Totally. So, usually if you're getting into sync music, which is music for TV or film, you'll have, you'll meet people and then eventually you'll link up with someone or a company that gets these briefs. So the company will, you know, we're doing a Doritos commercial or we're doing, an AT&T thing and this is what they want. So the brief will usually give a reference track or a couple reference artists or reference songs. So they want it to kind of sound in that world. And then they'll give a bunch of, loose descriptive terms,
Yeah.
dark, moody, happy, feel good, which could literally be anything. So, I think mixed with listening to what their references can kind of give you a good idea. So you just kind of
Quick
take
question
oh,
jumping in
yeah.
there. When what do you do? I'm just always curious about this. When the reference and the like texts don't match up at all. Like where they're
Yeah.
like, we want lo-fi bedroom pop, but then they give you like Rosalia, and you're like, how do you what do you approach?
I mean, there's no way of knowing what they want. I think you're safer to veer closer to the reference track because that's probably what they have in the like temp file.
That's a good point. So
Yeah.
yeah, they usually cut these things to a reference track sometimes if they have picture
Sometimes,
buffer.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say veer on that, but then, let's say the reference track was like a Hall& Notes song, but
Mhm.
they said dark and moody, which is not Hall& Notes.
Yes. Okay.
So you would listen to I would if I was doing it, I would listen to Hall& Notes song and like listen to what um elements make it sound like a Hall& Notes. So it has, the cheesy drum machine in there. It's got like a really clean, spanky DI'd guitar. It's got like real bass or synth bass, maybe one 70s synth like a Prophet, and maybe a CP70 piano or like a cheesy 80s piano. And that's kind of the elements. Okay, so those are the elements. Now, how do I make it dark and moody? Well, I'll like get my Moog synthesizer and make it a little dark patch and mess around with that. Or I could even take the same orchestration that's in the song and just make it minor. That can also change it. I'll just mess around with it, just kind of adding elements, staying in that world, playing around with it. But yeah, there's no way of knowing. Like, you think you might do something that's amazing, and they listen back and they're like, this is not what we want. We don't like it. Or you think you do something that is terrible and you miss the mark, and then they absolutely love it, and then that's it. So there's kind of no way of knowing. I think the more you do it, the better you get at just following your gut, and you'll see what works and you'll see what tends to stick. But at the end of the day, it's just like actors auditioning for a role or voice actors auditioning. They could be super talented, but it's just not what they're looking for. You think it's what they want, but then they have a different idea. So yeah,
that's really
there's
good.
no perfect science to it.
Really good perspective. Really good perspective. For things like that are so high scale, like a Super Bowl commercial, did you have to go through a bunch of revisions? Was there like a long process, or was it just kind of like you shot your shot and that one went in?
I think normally, yes. Especially the huge major budget ones. The one I did was for a pet food commercial that was actually pretty like not that it wasn't like a multi-million-dollar commercial. I mean, I don't know how much they spent, but it's just something you might watch on TV in passing of pet food. And the music was simple. It was, like a string quartet kind of thing. And yeah, it was pretty stripped down. So I worked with this guy who kind of got me the gig, and I sent him the stems, and then he extended it, added one or two small elements, and then that was it. So but I think if it was like a very big epic commercial, there would definitely be a lot of cooks in the kitchen in terms of you submit it, and then it would probably be a talk of 10 to 15 or however many people, and they're all inputting their ideas, and then they come back with a list of so many notes just to try and dial it in. So I'm sure in that case that it would be a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Have you ever had to do one with lyrics, like a sync with lyrics where this agency provides you like?
I haven't done anything where the agency provides it. I've definitely done a couple spots where especially nowadays there's more and more where they want something with vocals and lyrics, but you come up with the lyrics. At least that's my experience. You come up with the lyrics, and then you send them an acapella, instrumental, and full thing.
Cool. I've had a couple that have been. I haven't landed them because they've been really hard and super cringe. Where the agency says like, "I want you to sing this," and then
oh no,
I have to sing it. I'm like, oh, this is so bad. Like nothing really rhymes, and it's all like, yeah.
Oh man. And then it's a reflection of you because
yeah, 100%.
Your thing, but you don't want to. You got the thing, and then it gets in, but you don't want to show people because it's like just say, "Oh, I did this thing. Can I hear it?" I don't think it's up yet.
Yeah,
maybe soon.
It's only in Thailand.
It's in China. They don't have the same laws we have.
So I want to talk about hitting the road with somebody like Clairo, and kind of what is that like? Tour manager? Are there additional like kind of groups? Like what kind of scale of because I know that she's a big artist, but like what kind of scale of tour and logistics and stuff are you dealing with?
So we're probably playing, or last year we were playing venues between 2,000 and 6,000 people.
That's a big
So
range.
there's definitely a crew. There's a tour manager, front of house, a monitor mix person. There's guitar tech, a playback tech.
Nice.
There's lighting people, merch. I think that's it.
So are you guys touring with buses, multiple buses, or?
It depends. For the fly dates, we'll do hotels. And then for the States, we'll do buses, and then yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Any tips for somebody that's like never been on a tour bus, etiquette, fun adventures, things like that to let people in graduating from van tour up to bus life?
Yeah, I think there's no way to really prepare for it. You just throw yourself in the fire. Don't go into it with any expectations because I'm sure every tour is different. Because it's just like living in a house with, you know, people. You never know who's going to be in the house. Luckily, the store is amazing and we all get along so well, and it's like a family. So that's a great situation. But I'm sure there are tours where it's not that situation, and then you have to spend all your time in a confined space. But yeah, I don't think you can really plan for it. Um, you just go into it with an open mind and be easygoing, and you know, just like any social situation, don't be a jerk and
Mhm.
just be nice.
Yep. Totally. Totally. It's amazing how important that is and how often overlooked that is.
Oh
Just
yeah, I mean, you
uh,
play the show, which is only 10% of the time you're spent on the road. So that's yeah.
that's a great point. Have you had anything that came up on the road that was, like, unexpected, like, a pad on your saxophone stopped working or, like, artist wants to throw in some new tunes that you've never rehearsed or anything kinda like that, conflict management, overcoming? Doesn't have to just be this tour, just kinda like in general. I always think that those kinda stories are informative for people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, always should have a backup, and the guys in Nashville, they have usually like a backup for the backup
Uh-huh.
because and then let's say you have a backup system. The one time you go to do something without the backup is probably the time that it's going to
Yeah.
fail, and it
Right,
like
right.
doesn't fail any other time.
Uh-huh.
But I think having backup situations is always good because you never know what's going to happen. What happened on mine? I mean, like my acoustic kept it's just the pickup on it kept
Mhm.
stopped working
Ah.
throughout this tour, and I think because the stand, it
Mhm.
would fit it's got the jack in the bottom, and it would just get crunched every day because like, me
Okay, yeah.
trying to fit it in there,
Mhm.
and then, it would just get all crackly, and that was not a good vibe for, we have this one song where I'm playing it's really quiet and moody, and I've got this sound that really kinda cuts through, and I'm playing
Mhm.
some picky stuff, and then when now it's, like, cutting out, it's so loud, it's
Yeah.
like with the effects in there, so that was not ideal, but it's not the end of the world because I can
No.
just, I could literally hop to piano and play. I think in one song, someone's instrument went out, so then I played the part on piano.
Oh,
But
cool.
then the next night, they're like, "Oh, can you actually play it on acoustic?" Which I hadn't done before, but I just picked it up and then played
Nice.
it. So
Nice.
yeah, no major catastrophes. I'm sure. Did anyone else have like there was maybe some technical things with the keyboard one show,
Mhm.
which happens, I'm sure, to everyone.
For sure.
So, yeah, just knowing your setup, and if things go haywire, like, either having a backup or knowing it well enough that, you know how to kinda get back to where you are, and
Mhm.
also to not get stressed
Yeah,
because,
right.
like, you can definitely get freaked out in that situation, there's so much pressure, but it's not gonna change the situation, it's just gonna change how you're feeling. But
Yes.
obviously, if something goes haywire and it's not your fault, like people are gonna look to you
Mhm.
because it's coming from your area. So,
Mhm.
like it's stressful, but I think the more you do it, the more experience you get, and then, shit's gonna happen. So you just are able to like, you know, don't take it personally if everyone's like, this not happened to me, but just in
Mhm.
general.
Yeah,
If something happens and it's not your fault, but everyone's looking like giving you shit and whatever,
yeah.
it's like, okay, I
Firing
know
apart.
it's not my fault, so it's all good. It's like gonna be fine. We'll go to the next show. But
Yep.
I'm sure there's times where something gets fucked up and it's not your fault, but you get fired and lose the gig because of it. So I'm sure that happens too.
For sure. But I feel like that's one of the things that people discount about pro musicians is that they think they don't make mistakes, but really what they're good at is, like, hiding them or
Mhm.
recovering from them.
Totally.
It's like some of the some of my favorite drummers and stuff, they'll, like, put a beat somewhere weird, but then turn that into part of the phrase when in reality they just kind of screwed up. And it's like that's bringing that same mentality. Like you broke a guitar string. It's like, do you know how to play the part well enough without that string? It's like,
Right.
if you're a pro, you do. You can, you know how to like loosen up, figure that out, and just avoid that that string.
Yeah.
Play it on a different one. That's why.
Yeah, and no one's gonna know in the band usually, or in the audience especially, if like they're gonna know something's wrong, because if you're, freaking out and trying to scramble, it's gonna visually look like something's really wrong. But if something's really wrong and you just casually just put the guitar down and you just hang out, and then you just wait for the next song, then literally no one's gonna know anything went wrong, and it's gonna be like not that big of a deal, and then you don't even have to worry about it.
And I love your perspective too about just like know the songs well enough. So if you have to hop onto keys or if you have to hop onto another instrument in comp, like just know those changes so you can pull that off.
Yeah. That's definitely an advantage for me. I mean, if I was the bass player, the drummer, and something went wrong, then it's like your amp dies. Like, well, I don't know. There's nothing I can do.
Making mistakes on bass is such a bad feeling.
Yeah.
It's the whole foundation of the house just collapses and you're just like,
totally.
Oh, God.
There's a lot of pressure in that seat.
Yeah. It's a funny seat too, because a lot of people don't really notice it too much until they make a mistake.
Totally.
Like Unsung Heroes on the bass guitar.
Totally.
For sure. I want to ask you about improvisation and how being a multi-instrumentalist affects kind of your view of improvisation. Like, do you think that having saxophone articulation and understanding articulation from the perspective of like mouth and tonguing and stuff has affected the way that you view like articulating on piano or on guitar and vice versa? Like, do these cross streams, or do they kind of maintain like silos in your head a little bit more in terms of like, I approach this instrument this way, I approach that instrument that way when I'm really speaking and improvising on it?
I don't think I approach the piano or saxophone like their own thing, because they're so ingrained in second nature.
Cool.
They're just kind of a part of me, and I don't have to think about articulation or how I would the melodies in my head, and they just kind of come through my mouth or my fingers, and it's there. It's different on guitar because I'm more restricted of my technical facility of the instrument. So in that regards, I kind of approach it more like a guitar player, but trying to make it sing like a vocalist would. But I wouldn't. I think if I had the technical facility like I do on the other instruments for guitar, I would be able to have that same mentality. But guitar is more its own lane. I think bass is kind of in between.
Cool. That's good answer. I'm always curious. Something else I would love to talk to you about. I saw a sweet video that Clairo posted about the OMNICHORD.
Oh, yes.
So I would like to let the listeners in on the OMNICHORD and the beauty of this bizarre instrument. You have one? Oh, sick.
Let me grab my OMNICHORD.
All right, we're stalling. You guys are in for a treat. This OMNICHORD is one of the most bizarre and charming electronic instruments around.
I heard they're gonna reissue it.
Ooh,
for
nice.
30th anniversary or
50th anniversary of the OMNICHORD.
Okay, well, first you gotta have your OMNICHORD case that it came with.
Sweet.
The original case.
Yep, original case.
Suzuki OMNICHORD. So this is what it looks like. I put these colors so I could see in the dark what.
Oh, cool. That's a good idea.
To play.
Right,
because
there's
it's
no
black
LEDs
in a
on.
dark stage, so I know I stick, and there's 3 rows of buttons, so it gets kind of confusing, and they're all dark. Like, how could you ever see that on a dark stage? It's like gray, and actually black on black. So, all right, let's see if we get lucky. So, it's got a built-in
Speaker.
It's been being weird, but let's see if we get something. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now, how do we turn it off? We hit the off button. But yeah, so we had the OMNICHORD. So it started because I was playing auto harp for
Okay.
this one song of hers. And it sounded amazing, but it's my mom's auto harp from back in the day, and she would teach this like mommy me kind of thing, and she'd be the wheels on the bus go round. So I didn't want that to get lost or fucked up or anything on tour. So I'm like, I can't bring this out anymore. So I was like, all right, what's going to do the same thing? And, Omnichord was the obviously next best option. So then I was playing the Omnichord on stage, and then, we got her this Omnichord for her birthday, but we made this instructional video to kind of go along with it. So that's kind of how it came to be. And now I'm ready to be the Omnichord, the face of the Omnichord.
Yes.
So Suzuki, if you're listening, let's make it happen.
Omnichord influencer wanted.
They're great though. They literally work on everything. Any style of music, I think it can work on. It's great.
That's awesome. Well, I wanna turn back over to you for kind of like one last question. Is there anything in music, like it could be niche, it could be music theory, harmony, whatever, or even just perspective? Is there anything that you feel like really passionate about that isn't talked about enough? Like in terms of just like being in the creative space, accomplishing something musically, is there any like certain like pet emotion or feeling that you want to see expressed more, or technique that you want to see explored more in pop music or by musicians in general?
I'm always want to hear weird shit. That's
Yeah,
always exciting to me, which I feel like is getting more and more in pop music.
totally.
I think people who are making music, the way things are recorded and the production of them,
Mhm,
of an idea,
mhm.
goes hand in hand. And I think,
Okay.
it's great to write songs and to kind of make music, but if you have a certain, which I think once you start producing your own stuff, you learn this naturally. But having that ability to, if you play a piano part, it's not just like playing a piano part. It's okay, what piano am I going to do? How am I going to record it? How can I get it to sound the way I want it to sound? I
Mhm.
think all those things play into each other.
I like that. Those
Yeah,
cascading decisions and like having that specificity, having that nuance
totally.
at every
And
stage.
yeah, and it's good, we're all making our own music. So I think, it's good just to throw yourself in the fire and like, you know, get as many skills as you can, because we don't have, not everyone has the luxury to, hire all these people for every specific thing. So that's kind of
Sure.
how I gained all of my skills. It's like, okay, I want to record, but I can't afford a studio, so I'll have to learn to do it myself. Like,
Yeah.
I want a great looking video, but I can't hire, a really expensive video company. So I'm gonna do it myself. I'm like, now I need to record guitar and bass on this song, but I don't want to hire, or I can't afford to hire someone, so I'm gonna do it myself. So I think out of necessity, that's how it's happened for me. But there's so many great tools that people can go online to learn everything. I think getting as many tools at your disposal is great, and it's kind of essential in today's date and age.
That's a really great perspective. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, get in that bag, deepening that bag, figuring out what you need in that moment. And not and I like the way that you did it too, because it's very similar to how I did it, where um, you approach what is your need right now, and you add in that skill set, and knowing like at a later date there will be other skills that you gotta have to add, but you're not trying to eat the whole elephant at once,
Mhm.
but very like methodically based on like the priority of the stuff you got to get done right now
Totally.
to
Yeah.
learn it. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me, Steve. I really appreciate
Yeah. Thanks for
all
having
the
me. This has been
insight.
so much fun.
Yeah, this is awesome. Where can people find you? What do you recommend? What should they check out to learn more about Steve Brickman?
Yeah. You just go to stevebrickman.com, Brickman. It's got all the stuff. It's got my socials, and, Instagram is the Steve Brickman. But yeah, that's where you go.
And great for up and comers, great examples of audition tapes on there. Your website is obviously you've got the video production shops too, but I see why you're able to get gigs with that website. It's
Yep.
really
I did the website myself too. So, Squarespace is a powerful tool, and, couldn't hire a website developer. So just
love it.
learn to do it myself.
Love it. That's the moral of today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Music Appreciation 101. I am Scoobert Dubert. You can find my stuff at scoobertdubert.pizza. scoobertdubert.pizza. That's where you can find my music and my stuff. And thanks again to Steve, and look forward to talking again someday and maybe making some music together someday.
Yeah.
Awesome.
See?